That's right. I think it's going to get a job. Then it's nice as food trucks. That's fun.
I think the other thing they're forgetting is that I recall something about Kurt Klein mentioning about there's actually a limit in the rules.
Long time no see. Yeah. Everybody's thinking, good, Colin.
There's actually a limit on signs, how long you can count them up.
Is there what's on here?
Don't know what it is, but apparently the sign rules there.
Set. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Wolcott Wastewater. It is August 20th. We have some new folks here in the room and on Zoom, so maybe we can just go around the room. We'll start in the room. I'm Jim Ryan, Wolcott resident, wastewater chair.
Martin Swiftborn.
Lee Roberts, live on West Hill Road, or sorry, Linda lives on West Hill, I live on Sand Hill Road.
Tori Collins with Mobile County Planning Commission.
Seth Jensen, Wolcott County Planning Commission.
Amy McCrellis, Stone Environmental Consultant.
Bruce Wheeler, Wolcott resident.
Select board.
And Bruce and Alan are also on the wastewater committee, and that is true. And
Online.
Bradley is also on the committee and is out of town. And on Zoom, can we go around, Peter?
Hi there, Peter Lazorchek from Stone Environmental.
Mike,
Mike Thomas, Wolcott resident.
Emily, and I can't see who's behind the thing. What's up?
It's Oshawa.
Oh, okay, I can't see it.
Yeah.
Yep. Emily Hackett, State of Vermont, Clean Water SRF and ARPA.
Hi, Ashwak, State of Vermont Wastewater Program.
What's that mean?
I did not understand. What did you just say?
That's the person who just introduced herself, her name is Oshawa. She is with the Indirect Discharge Program, Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. So if we are successful in submitting a permit application for the community wastewater system, she will be our reviewer.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And
Thanks,
Emily? Oh, sorry. Emily, can you just give your title too?
Yep. Clean Water SRF, Village ARPA.
Can you just go over the acronyms for the folks that are not?
Oh, sorry. So Clean Water State Revolving Fund. So I'm the design engineer, and then I'm the technical project manager for the ARPA Village Water and Wastewater Grant.
Thank you. Okay. Not sure if everybody online got, oh, Bradley. Bradley, we're just doing introductions. I like your painting there. Bradley, can you just introduce yourself if you would mind?
Yeah, I'm Bradley. I am a resident and wastewater commissioner.
Okay. I'm not sure if everybody on Zoom got an agenda. I'm not sure if Tori, if we can put that up for folks.
Sure, I should be able to do it. Yeah.
Make her a couple. It's that bomb, right?
So just trying to put up the agenda for the folks on Zoom. Folks on Zoom see that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just quickly go through the items. It's a relatively brief agenda tonight. We have approved last meeting's minutes. We have an update from Stone Environmental. Amy, do you want to just give us, will Peter give us a little preview about just what you're going to be updating us about?
Sure. Just a brief update on what we've been up to since the last committee meeting, and also just support items for the wastewater committee in the town as we continue to move forward in time.
And maybe for Lee and Mike's benefit, who haven't maybe less familiar with Stone Environmental, could you just tell them your role here?
Sure.
Committee.
Sure. So I am your fearless hydrogeologist and soil scientist, and Peter, also on the line, is our design engineer. Stone Environmental is the engineer for the town's wastewater project. So we've been working on this on and off for the last several years, and very seriously for the last couple of years. First, trying to identify areas that might be suitable for community wastewater project and what types of technology might be possible, assisting with grant applications and funding agreements and all that fun stuff. And now with the successful funding of the project pending this upcoming bond revote, trying to help the town move the project forward.
Right. I had the pleasure of communicating with Peter by email on some estimate questions that Jim forwarded, and so thanks. I know some of your firm's involvement.
Thanks. We're going to go over Amy and Peter had drafted a presentation for our information meeting that we're going to go over tonight. That we'll cover. The other items of Seth, are you going to cover some flood resilience modeling at some, just to discuss that at some point? We talked about that for tonight at the informational meeting.
Yes, we'd asked the engineers who developed the flood model to also be available and to address some of the background. So we should coordinate that messaging with Jessica and how they'll be involved and when they'll be involved.
These are different engineers.
These are different engineers.
Okay.
So,
and who are those engineers?
for background, Wolcott County Planning Commission has been working since 2014 to build out a hydraulic model of the Royal Main Stem. The good deal of the work was done in Wolcott in 2018, 2019. The town secured a municipal planning grant to do that work. And so that is to get better data that is available from the FEMA maps to understand flood risk and to evaluate impacts of different mitigation or incursions into the floodplain area. And so we had asked them to, the engineers from a firm called SLR to be available for the meeting to talk about or to answer questions about some of the town's work on flood issues. And I'll follow up with them and connect you guys talking about different engineering stuff.
And maybe we can take a minute under other agenda items for you to talk, Seth and Tori, about the greater Wolcott County Flood Resilience group that Linda and I are part of, and how this fits into that work, or at least compatible with that work.
Yeah.
Okay, any other agenda items that we'd like to add? bug you, Troy, but would you mind putting up the previous meeting minutes?
Oh, sure.
Yep. And I missed this meeting, so to
We'll make a motion to approve the wastewater committee meeting minutes of July 16th, 2024.
And just so I'm clear, the questions that were asked that we make a cover, or that, is that part of the meeting minutes?
No,
Separate, okay, like on the FAQ.
Yeah.
Okay. Any seconds? I'll second that, it's Bruce. Any discussion? All in favor?
I,
Aye. Opposed? Bradley, you?
I can throw an eye in there.
Okay. Opposed? No? Okay, we have our meeting minutes approved. Okay, we have an update from Stone Environmental and Amy or Peter, or turn things over to you. One or both.
Peter, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I'll go ahead because I think I've been involved in a little bit more of the happenings, but we I guess first update is we have started the topographic surveying with our surveying subcontractor, which is Latitudes Land Surveying. And they started last week and made some good progress. Pretty much we have a decent topographic map of the school property and the forest main route down through the town forest at this point. And so I'm going to be connecting with them, and then we'll start moving up through the right-of-way sections on School Street and or Route 15 in the coming weeks. In addition to that, Stone's staff has been busy, and we've had several days up in Wolcott working with landowners who have responded to the sort of the permission to work with us on their properties, and we've met with several landowners and sort of gone through the questionnaire and surveyed several basements as part of our initial design process that we're going to need. And lastly, Jeff Hoffer, our water supply hydrogeologist that we're working with, has started diving into his work a little bit more. And he met with the school and did a survey of the school water system. And I believe last week installed some transducers on the well to sort of monitor the drawdown of that water supply as it gets used. I don't know if Amy has anything additional to add on that front, but quite a bit of work happening on different fronts, and it's all going reasonably well.
Peter, did you say you did a topo survey of the school property down the town forest right away? And did you say the main line of school and 15, School Street and 15? Did you say that?
No, that will be next.
Okay.
Today we've only been on the school and the town forest parcel.
Okay.
Yep. I think next step for us is this week we'll connect with the surveyor and we'll kind of do a review of which parcels and landowners have gotten back to us and strategically pick probably the the best part of the village to start doing our surveying, kind of where we have the most properties that are willing to let us get going right away.
Any questions, or Amy, did you have anything to add?
I don't think I have anything to add at this point. Peter did a good job of summarizing where we've been. As we are really diving into the more engineering side, your scientists, soil geologists may occasionally have fewer things to say.
And what's the goal before, say, the snow flies as far as survey?
Goal before snow flies is to have the survey wrapped up to the extent possible, and to be sort of shifting a little bit more to the nuts and bolts design aspects of it. We now that we have a decent survey of the school property, we can start to refine the various strip dispersal zones and kind of think about that a little bit more. And then one piece more immediate is, in the next month or so, we'll be kind of focusing a lot on the School Street Bridge crossing there, so we can be working with the sub-consultants, well, not really sub-consultants, but the consultants working for V-Trans on that design and helping them put our pieces and bid specifications into their documents.
And that's still on track for construction next summer, the School Street Bridge replacement.
Well, yeah, it's destruction, but it's not, the replacement of the bridge won't be till 26, but they'll start construction in 25.
Two seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
flat-
exactly.
Flat iron use would start next summer.
I hope.
Sincerely hope.
So and maybe this is a question for Emily. Ethan Swift from DEC mentioned something about checking the bridge for riparian buffer plantings or something. I don't know if that's maybe an indirect from this project, but he had a chance to look at that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I thought it came out of Emily's shop, that request.
There are a whole bunch of Emily's.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds familiar, but it would not be our group. It may be for corridor, possibly. I'm not sure what.
You're breaking up a little bit, Emily.
Yeah. The service is not good. Came from either Fish and Wildlife or maybe River Corridor.
I don't know, they might have contacted Bruce as a adjacent landowner
Oh, sure.
about buffer plantings related to the new bridge construction.
I haven't had any contact.
They talked about it briefly when I went with the engineers, when they were talking to the landowners that they needed to obtain easements from. It would be on the town property on the Bruce's side is what they were talking about. And I got today a thing, because they're gonna move the pole. The utility pole.
Actually, I did have a discussion quite a while back with the landscaping engineer from the state,
Right.
and at that time, they were quite willing to do whatever we wanted in terms of landscaping, but they're talking about trees or just pretty much whatever the town would like to do. It's quite a sizable area right there, once you think about where the bridge is going to be and where my property starts.
Is the new bridge gonna be upstream?
Upstream.
Yeah.
They're swaying the alignment a little bit to make it more river friendly. The model we talked about earlier, being
Right.
referenced in the design, actually.
Right, and the abutment on this south side changes quite a bit, and the river's wider, and so on and so forth.
There's some mostly erosion benefit, but some minor flood reduction benefit from the
Yeah.
changes they made to the alignment as well.
And so just like taking a quick follow for Amy, not sure, have you shared the soil, test pit? Just general results
I think that I was,
at the school?
I think I was camping when those results were shared with the committee last month, but the test pits that were advanced, back in July, fortunately, were very consistent with the soil borings that we had advanced. So, in St. Patrick's Day, when we were wearing t-shirts, it's crazy. But so relatively sandy soils, well drained, nothing. Fortunately, this time, nothing new or surprising in a negative way in the test pits. A couple of folks from the indirect discharge program and wastewater team from DEC were able to come and observe those test pits as well. So it was this very successful day. We got what we needed out of that. We also had a couple of water supply division hydrogeologists on site that day. I don't know how much of that was shared at the meeting in July, but they also, we had good discussions about what we were planning to do to assess the school well. Peter gave an update on that. So we're, it was a very good day in July.
And was the principal, was that put back to his satisfaction?
I have not heard that it wasn't, so I'm gonna call that a success, but the next time we're in town, check in with them, make sure.
Was it like five test pits or something like that?
Yes.
I haven't officially checked in with him either. I did kind of ask the gentleman from the road foreman or the road crew that was helping us to make sure he did a good job. And when I was back up there recently prepping for the surveyor, it was actually kind of hard to tell where some of the test pits were. I mean, it's sandy soil, so it wasn't perfect grass, but it looked pretty good.
The seed and mulching.
Yeah.
Established. We don't need to buy any sod or anything.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
He did, the operator did a great job of sort of taking the topsoil and setting to the side and reusing it as he was backfilling at the end.
Excellent. Any more updates or questions of the updates?
Anyone?
Sure.
Yeah, what is when is construction to start?
The project, project proper, leave that to Peter, right? The best person to ask.
Yeah, in a kind of a best case scenario, possibly at the end of the construction season in 2025, but more realistically, we're just looking at a 2026 construction season, hopefully starting as early as we can in the spring. The caveat to that is, well, I think the bridge deck will be 2026 also. So whatever can be prepped with part of the Bridge Street School in 2025, that kind of corresponds with that construction sequencing. Some of the force main pipes or sleeves might be installed at that point.
No, is that it seems the last what's online now shows that this summer start. Didn't I see the construction was originally in 2025?
I have not
25.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, that might say 25, not 24 yet.
No, oh, I'm sorry, 25, I thought was what was originally in the report. And Peter's saying it may actually be 26.
I think it was they gave themselves like two seasons, two field seasons, two construction seasons to complete it. It's gonna
I see. That was what's the duration once somebody gets going? How long does that work take?
It will take probably the better part of a construction season. It's quite a bit of work. We haven't tried to map it all out, but I would think it would be a 3 or 4 month long project.
Right, so no, it wasn't a 2-year construction duration. But does anybody know that what the report says for what the schedule is?
The preliminary engineering report?
Yes, the preliminary, whatever is the latest that's posted on the website.
So we could take a peek.
I mean, I can speak to it a little bit. The preliminary engineering report from last year did, I think, say probably starting in 2025 and then wrapping up in 2026 construction season. I think that
Sorry,
now,
do you know that, or you're saying that's probably?
I'm saying that's what was in our report from last June.
Oh, okay.
And so both the project and time and everything has moved around some. And so now what we're thinking is that we'll get permits, get through design and permitting 2024 into 2025. The ideal would be that we would be able to start maybe the drip dispersal field and start the force main part of the construction project in 2025, but most of it is going to happen in 2026.
So the work at the school, what happens?
It has to be completed by September of 2026.
Right.
For our funding.
Unless there's been an update from Emily on flexibility, but I haven't.
Nope.
Yet.
No, we want to spend, the ARPA funding for CRRP. And then you have some funding, I think, a little bit on the tail end there, possibly. Maybe the local ARPA, I think. So, yep.
Well, the main, if it seems if there's no, there isn't like as long as it gets done according to the funding requirements, then that's one, important feature. The other would be, and I don't know why I thought that the report showed construction in 2025, because the matter would be relative to the construction costs and escalation that would occur between, if it is a year slip, that is,
Correct.
if it was intended for this summer and actually gets pushed out to the next, is that accounted for?
Well, Peter just updated the costs of the project from the preliminary engineering report, which was a year ago. This spring, updated those numbers and increased the numbers a little bit. And we also have a 30% contingency baked in. And we actually have a little bit more than 30%.
Right. And I think I saw, what did you call it? A funding stack?
Yes.
Right. Now, but that didn't look like, that was not the project estimate.
Funding stack.
The project estimate is how much we presently believe the project will cost, soup to nuts. And then the funding stack is how we're paying for that.
Gotcha. Well, my question was whether that estimate has been, the updated estimate is posted. And I looked at this bit, it must have been maybe a month ago.
It's updated with our first bond vote and our bond vote, when we said we needed to borrow, it says right there in the warning.
Right. No, but Jim, when we talked, you said an updated estimate was going to be posted soon.
And we do have that on our fact sheets. Bradley can correct me if I'm wrong, but that should be on our website.
Why
The
would we,
updated fact sheets with the updated.
why would we estimate that the price would go up in
Well,
2026?
simply by escalation.
What kind of escalation?
Inflation.
In all escalation in, no, I should just say, I manage design and construction projects in California for my whole career. And I presented budget packages to the departments of finance and and I was a project manager for large construction projects. So the issue of time, an estimate is dated. An estimate is done at today's costs.
Sure.
And then one escalates it. And in the state of California, we have 5% annual increase. And now my guess is that 5% is probably not adequate these days.
Is it possible that the cost could go down?
I've never seen it happen.
Not as of late, it seems, but,
No.
but maybe we just pause 1 second. Peter, would you mind, jumping in and, could you just, maybe for Lee's benefit, just talk about what you factored into the new number from this spring, from that change from the preliminary engineering report?
Yeah, I can elaborate a little bit. I guess a couple of things. In Vermont, one of the tools we use for the estimating is kind of the V-Trans standard rates. It's not a great tool, but it's kind of the best we got in terms of getting reasonable up-to-date data. So
Same in Caltrans in California, same sort of
okay,
thing.
yeah, same
Yeah,
thing.
price
So
tag.
we got some updated rates. I'd have to look to see what the date of that was, but I want to say, through 2023 anyway. And so in the spring, we used those rates to adjust our previous cost estimates. We also made some changes to aspects of the project that we knew were already, getting tweaked in our design, mostly related to floodproofing of the tanks at the various properties. And so we kind of had a current cost estimate based on the most recent V-Trans. We also went back to some of the bigger vendors and updated those costs, most notably through Aramco that supplies a lot of the hardware for the step tanks. In addition
Peter,
to that,
can I jump in too real quick, just on the contingency part when you have a moment?
Yeah, sure. I guess the only other thing I would add, I don't really have a whole lot to say in terms of we don't have an annual increase built in, but I've kind of always viewed those V-Trans rates as a little high for a project like this, particularly in the Northeast Kingdom. So that's given me a little bit of I don't know, relief in my kind of anxiety about where the costs are actually going. And then I think Emily can chime in a little bit of what we've historically used for our contingencies, particularly, as we move through the design process and what we did in this particular case.
So typically in Vermont, so Clean Water SRF, we do all wastewater projects in our program. We're a funding program. And what we have seen over the last few years is, definitely that cost increase in projects. So what we've asked engineers to do is typically we would keep a 20% at this point and then go down to, 15, 10%. Some people go down to 5% at the very end. What we've asked engineers to do is to keep a 30% contingency, which is very unheard of in the Vermont community in engineering. But over the last 2 years, because of the price increases we're seeing, that's why they're carrying such a high contingency. Normally we would never carry that high, but we're asking all of our projects to carry a high contingency to help with that escalation in cost over a longer, if it doesn't go out to construction this year, maybe next year type of thing.
Thank you, Emily. Well, there's really 3 elements to contingency. One being a design contingency, that is, the design team, they haven't figured out, haven't gotten into all of the details. And so a project is wise to have a contingency. Secondly, there's that contingency for bid day. That is a bid, and in addition to inflation, the other potential on bid day is just a bid climate contingency, and we used to have to apply those to, say, remote sites where it was hard to get people to bid, and so generally numbers are going to be higher there. But in this case, presumably that's not the issue. We're not so far away, but still, if there are folks that are all busy in Montpelier or all over the state, then there's going to be a price premium. So that's another value of the contingency. And then there's escalation. And so that's that, and to hear that the V-Trans numbers from 2023 are going to carry through to construction season in 2026. I think that you could well have eaten up 15% of your contingency right there, just in 5% annual. Now, nobody here in these rooms knows that. However, if it was the prudent move is to say yes, that we're going to be prepared for that, and so that's what I have to.
Those are all good points, Lee. So the original preliminary engineering report was 2023, I guess, and then it was updated in 2024. The new numbers that Peter was talking about.
Right, using 2023 numbers, I think he said.
Right, but and we have a 30%. They actually have more than 30% contingency now. We have 30%.
But Jim, that doesn't, I understand that, but I'm saying that in 30% could go, and let me lead into the next matter. And that is, the 1.4, the bond, the need for the bond vote. And it's been said that, well, only use that if absolutely necessary. And of course, that's an important point relative to the community support or the vote, and not taking a stand on whether that's a rightful thing or not, but simply the fact that it would be used, whether I feel it's a good idea or not. I think that the question, when you consider the things that will chew away at contingency, the likelihood grows that would be used. And then some questions come up about, well, and just a simple one, if that were, and heaven forbid, and let's hope that everything works the other way, what would 1.4 million, and would the bond still be for 1.4 million?
Well, let me back up. One other thing that
Yes.
we hadn't got to yet is we also have another 1.4 additional $1 million additional grants pending through congressionally directed spending through Senator Welch's office, and approved. It has to go through several steps. The first step was approved.
Right.
So that we're hoping we're going to get potentially another $1 million. As this committee is working very hard, especially the Lamar Regional Planning Commission has been looking at all avenues for funding.
Believe me, I know how hard these things are. So yeah. I understand people.
So if we secure that grant, we're going to be very comfortable.
Well, but are you comfortable enough to say that we won't need the bond? I mean, that's the thing, that once you say that we're going to entertain the bond and keep it in our back pocket, whatever it is, then the alternative is to say we'll never use And so let's just get it off the table and we don't have to talk about it. But if it is on the table, then the simple question is, what would that amount to, say on a, like a $200,000 appraisal? Or what would the cost of that be?
We have
heard.
run those numbers before. We secured the last 1.4 million right before the first vote, literally from Emily's shop at the state, where we found out that the day before the bond vote, we received 1.4 million. And we had this a preliminary crunching up the numbers of what that be. It would be worst case scenario of a 40-year loan at a 2% interest rate.
Okay,
And doing the numbers that way,
Yeah.
the numbers are still very low number.
and the bond climate is still pretty much that 2% is a reasonable.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and I don't, I would expect it to be small, truly,
Yeah.
but I just,
As a long
as a
term.
point of reference, I think it's an important number to have, just so it's not out there as a you know, some scary.
And this committee is doing our due diligence and securing all the possible funding. I am still shocked that we have raised $5 million for this project thus far, with another $1 million pending, almost $6 million for this project, for this.
Yeah,
small
it's
town.
impressive.
Yeah, and yeah, we're doing everything we can to secure as much money as we can and to secure more than we need, and hopefully it'll be more than we need, and we will have extra that gets sent back to.
Sure.
Excuse me, but I think what we're dealing with is uncertainty, and uncertainty goes both ways. We just don't know. And to suggest that it always goes up, I believe, is just simply doesn't take into account the economy of Vermont, the contractors, all kinds of things. But I don't believe we can just suggest that it's always going up. And they sound a little bit like scare tactics. It's unknown. It is purely unknown what the cost of the system will be, plus or minus, not just plus. Is my opinion.
But I think
The cost of the system, that certainly should be known.
I
But
think
it's plus or minus. It is not always just
Of
plus.
course, which is the use of a portion of the contingency.
But I think the bigger picture here is with Emily working on numerous projects throughout the state and her office and applying the grants to a lot of these projects. And hearing what Emily was saying, that, you know, in the past it was 15% contingency, maybe 20%. And we wanted to be extra conservative and say, I think we're probably at 35% now, if I had to guess, in the contingency. And we're still, and we're applying for more money. I think we're doing everything that we could possibly do on.
I understand. I don't think that you can just ignore the fact that there is a annual inflation rate. And it's all good news that there is a buffer that can be pushed against. It seems to me the easier way to say that is that we have accounted for that. Maybe that's where some of the money that you think you might have to put back to acknowledge in the estimate that there is an escalation, and that's what, and it pencils out at the bottom. And that's not for me to say. And my questions in that vein are answered. Thank you very much.
Were you going to ask something, Seth? Before we move on?
I want to make sure I have this right with Tori, that when we talk about the funding cap and the project being fully funded with the current estimate in the current funding stack, that is inclusive of the 30% contingency.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
It's actually more than 30%.
Yes.
And we're gonna go where we do the presentation. We have a slide on cost too.
Oh, that's coming up here now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'd like to kind of move on, unless there's any questions. We can keep on task here. Can we go over the presentations? Amy, you and Peter updated this.
Yes, so what you're looking at now is a dense and to this point, only very lightly edited version of the PowerPoint that we used at the original public hearing back in June. So some of the slides are updated, for instance. Actually, do we want to just step through it?
Sure.
Have folks had a chance to look at the PDF that went out a little bit late last week?
Yeah,
Yep. Sure, if you want to.
yeah.
Okay. Anything on the first slide? I added revote, but if we wanted to say reconsideration, we could say that. That was the only change.
Revote is what most
Yeah.
voters would understand.
Okay.
And maybe between that slide, the first slide and this slide, I know we've discussed this before. It could maybe a timeline of the different votes that from the town plan to the select forming of the wastewater committee to the school board vote. They're just the votes that have taken place so far. might be a good slide to insert in there.
We could do that. I think I guess it might be helpful for us to take a couple minutes to just talk out loud about what our goals are for this presentation. Because this is a public hearing, a revote of the thing that was approved in June.
Right.
We have an hour.
You have as much time as you want.
Okay, never mind.
I think it's important to show the vetting process.
Sure.
That this project has had thus far.
I do not disagree, but if we were working under time constraints.
Well, last time, because we were having, warned time for starting the school meeting, we only had an hour.
Right.
This is a select board meeting. I mean, I don't want you to go to 8 o'clock, but you can go to 7:30.
That's helpful to know, Linda.
Yes.
Yeah, because I noticed it was very, very concise. But I mean, that's good because we want to have plenty of time for discussion, Q&A.
Where are we having the meeting? I hadn't really
We're
followed
having
that.
it, we're having it right here
Okay,
during the select board meeting because we can Zoom it, we can record it.
all right, yep. Sounds good.
You need authorization for design?
Design of.
It says design, permitting and construction, that next slide.
Oh, we'll show you the language of the article.
Yeah, but that's not his question. His question is, do we need approval for design?
Shall the voters authorize design? I mean, design is already underway, right?
Yeah.
It must have already been authorized.
It's already underway and it has been for some time, and we don't get to change the language of the bond article at this point. So it is a revote of the article that was passed in June.
All right. well,
Nothing
don't-
can change, nothing can
my-
change.
I'm sorry, what?
Nothing can change.
The design,
Like one might ask
the
if-
design didn't start until after the vote, which was.
Right, so if it's not yet, is that an,
Yeah, we're kind of stuck with this language because of.
yes, I understand.
Legally,
But if, without the authorization, design must not have needed, authorization for design.
well, we have the vote, the first vote.
Well, that didn't kick off design.
Yeah, maybe Emily can address. Emily, does the SRF process require a bond vote for the engineering phase?
The only time we require a bond vote is when you are taking debt.
And so at the moment, there's no debt associated with the design phase, so there's not a need for the bond for the design phase.
Okay, so it's not, no big deal.
Fortunately, it's no big deal because we're stuck with this language.
Yes, right, no, and you have money to pay for it outside of the bond.
Right.
Right.
Right. This slide is a little copy paste from the original presentation, just updated for changes in committee members. And I guess the one question I have is Forrest isn't here tonight, but is he still showing up and supporting on occasion, or?
Did he get the agenda? Because I wasn't here for the last meeting, so I don't know if he was. He wasn't here.
Forrest has been here since the last bond vote. I don't remember I don't think he was at the last meeting though.
No.
I can check in on that.
Okay. Okay, Tori. Thoughts?
Comments, suggested? This one runs right into the flood resilience improvement.
And I think when we talk about vibrant, it's worth discussing what that means, and there's been some perception that there's going to be all these new buildings in the village, brand new footprints, new buildings built in floodplain, and that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about utilizing the vacant buildings like the old schoolhouse, like the church, some vacant homes that are already in the village that have failing septic systems that need this project to just be utilized in the existing footprint, in the existing shell.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the word maintain. Is there a better word, or? I mean, basically, we want to stop these houses from spewing sewage into the river.
So we want to be able to maintain them, not have them, become derelict because they can't have a septic system
Right.
What if we?
any longer. I mean, I like maintaining that.
What about revitalize? And then get rid of the last bullet?
Yeah, I'm not sure about
No?
revitalize versus maintain.
To, I guess, maintain.
It's an upgrade to some extent.
Maintaining,
Existing.
meaning maybe a better language would be to fully utilize existing buildings, build homes and businesses.
I'm not sure if I want to share this doomsday story, but it's a story that is in fact a real thing that is happening in the community that I used to engage with, which had a vote on a wastewater project last fall that failed by about 0.5 percentage point. There's a homeowner in that community who is now facing putting what's called a best fix system next to a drainage ditch. You know, for probably more than $50,000 and will, as a result, lose the ability to do things like have an in-law apartment in their home. So I think there is an actual risk to homes from failing infrastructure. So maintaining what you have may be only possible if you address the septic issue for some of these lots.
I'm just add in there's purported, from what I hear from a couple of people, to be a new septic system up here by the rail trail that cost $30,000 to put in recently.
That was funded through an emergency repair was funded with by Learn through the flood recovery fund.
Okay.
But it is still at risk for future damage based on the modeling data, especially erosive risk.
Right.
And so that wasn't a full replacement. That was emergency repairs, and it was $30,000. So a new system would be more than that.
And we do have failed systems in town, is that correct? I mean,
You've had systems that have failed in terms of backing up, which
right.
And all of the engineers talk about the nuances of the word failing with septic, but
I was gonna say from the state's perspective, the word failed means, you know, a very serious consequence for homeowners, and that requires them to replace their system, which is very expensive. Many homeowners can't afford to do that. So there are many failed or failing systems, but many are undocumented because they're failing. So there's kind of that distinction between what it means when something has actually failed and gone and gotten a permit for best fix or a new system versus failing. Hope that helps.
Emily, from the state's perspective, maybe relative to this slide and the next one, I think while we're on this slide, I think having some examples of what we mean by these bullets, these are pretty general words.
Right.
Having some real examples of what that means and what Seth just mentioned. And, about the $30,000 system, or about in town, or the one, I think you're talking about Westward, about what happened over there, and about the town's plan for the schoolhouse. I mean, these are important real life examples of what we're talking about.
One of the things I've been asking some folks is what happens if you do not get a wastewater system? What's this town going to be like? What do you do with the failed systems? Et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just repairing existing systems, it's what the hell do you do if you don't have a wastewater system with respect to those failed systems?
Tori, would you mind going to the next one?
And Jim, just before that matter of grow the grand list, or is that also maintained? If we're not planning on new.
Yeah, we took grow out of another piece of literature. We didn't like grow.
On ground list.
Yeah, we took that word out.
Well, in a lot of cases, the houses are still owned by the private residents, but they're abandoned, and the thought, and some of them are abandoned because they don't have a system or they've failed system. And if there is a system in place and people are able to hook up to that system, they can live in the house. And also, we have a declining student population at the school that we're hoping that more families will come in those vacant homes or those underutilized homes.
So an abandoned house doesn't pay property tax.
What's that?
An abandoned house does not pay property tax.
They do, but having actually more students,
It's so.
more students at the school, more physical student
I see.
bodies at the school.
No, gross, but that has nothing to do with the grand list.
An abandoned home is appraised for much less than a
Right,
home
it's
that has a
depreciated.
family living in it who actually maintains it.
Lee, are you suggesting there would not be an increase in the grand list? for some reason?
No, I was just wondering whether the grand list actually grows. You were just saying we're not expecting new businesses,
We're not expecting new businesses.
New buildings.
new buildings.
We're not anticipating new buildings.
That's what Jim just.
No, not many.
Can I?
Out of the flood zone.
Clarification quickly, so I think there's a perception sometimes that growing the grand list happens best by building new buildings, and then those two things are sort of synonymous, but sometimes one of the most effective ways to grow the grand list is reinvesting in underutilized properties. So an example of that, happier example than the last one, because I'm not always the angel of death, is in the village of Jeffersonville, the old granary building, which is on 15. Some of you might know it as Ace Glass. Some of you might know it as the Burger Bar. Some of you might know it as the bike shop. That was a, very underutilized building. The rehab of that began last year actually reduced the footprint by about 50% because the older abandoned section was removed, but the reinvestment has added about $500,000 to the grant list.
Understood, thank you.
So that's how those two things can happen.
Sure.
We have some huge, the warehouse in the middle of town is huge, it's vacant. And MSI is losing all the rental money that it could be applied for. It's high and dry, it would add to the grand list. You can put all kinds of things in there. It's being talked about as a tiny house factory, a sports center. So all of those things will add to the grand list.
Sure, understood, thank you.
So one of the things we found out was, not everyone knows what the grand list is.
Yeah, I think it's explained.
So do you want to change that to tax base or?
Something more that they understand, yeah,
That's a good point.
grow the tax base.
Yeah. Would expand tax base be better than grow? Like, because grow does to people mean often buildings when I talk to people, but expand. And I'm throwing that out there for the committee and you and anybody listening in, if that explains that better than grow the grants.
Yeah. What we're talking about is economic growth.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, try to keep us on task here.
People with, oh dear.
Go to the next slide, sorry.
So, are we fixing those or?
I think if we could, maybe whoever, we haven't covered who's gonna go over each slide, we can do that through email like we did last time. But maybe whoever's discussing the slide can just go over some examples of what we mean by these bullets, some real life examples.
We're not gonna take grand list off and use tax base?
No.
I think we should choose, I like,
Yes.
I personally like the text, like, that's a little more approachable and
Is
folks are
someone-
more likely to get it.
Someone documenting the changes.
Yes.
Okay.
I think between Tori and I we will have one complete set of notes. and we're done.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So I'd like, Emily, are you still on and kind of connected?
Yes, I'm still on. And I also wanted to let you guys know that we do have another meeting tonight for another town that's coinciding with this. So I just was going to ask if you guys needed anything else from myself so that I could jump
Yes.
over to the thing.
If you, and actually I can talk about the, why is Wolcott Village establishing a wastewater system in the village a high priority for the state and this Department of Environmental Conservation? If you, could you share that just from a 30,000-foot view?
Yep, I sure can.
Relative to this slide, and we have some new folks here joining us. in the room and on Zoom for their benefit.
Yep, so because we are in the water investment division and we are all about water quality. So if we took it from a 30,000 view, went up to a 40,000 view, there's also within our department floodplain. And so making communities and villages in particular more resilient around flooding, which includes the infrastructure for the community. And then if we go up even higher from that at a very high view, space view, economic development and housing for these projects, particularly affordable housing, is a big thing in the state as well for these community systems. Does that kind of help a little bit?
Yeah, and if you thought that this system would not be compatible for flood resilience, you wouldn't fund this. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, correct. We
And-
do not fund projects that would not be at this point. Not that we wouldn't. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this because there are, very large wastewater treatment facilities. We all know them. We see them in the news that have been getting hit hard over the last couple of floods. But as a whole, the state of Vermont is trying very hard to increase flood resiliency for our infrastructure to protect it, because ultimately, when we're not protecting infrastructure, it just adds more and more cost, right, to replace it. At some point, I know there's some things coming down the pipeline. I don't know all the details, but at some point, homeowners with flood, who are constantly getting septic systems knocked out by floods, at some point the state may step in and say, you need to find another solution to your wastewater. So these communities like you guys, this helps in so many ways. It helps with improving the water quality of the river. It helps improving flood resiliency, and it helps with the economic and housing.
And for benefit of folks here, the state, especially the Department of Environmental Conservation, both in Emily's shop, the indirect discharge program, also watershed management division. We have hydrogeologists, we have river scientists, we have river engineers, we have watershed coordinators that have all identified this project as a high priority, both for water quality and for flood resilience. And I just need to reaffirm that while Emily's on the line, and why the state is funding this project and why the state is overseeing this whole project, the design and the permitting of this project once it's installed. Any questions for Emily Ashworth before they have to leave?
Did the state ever talk to any of the homeowners that might be hooked up to the system? Because you talk about the river water quality on the water quality, but what about the people in the village that don't want this? Did you ever get their opinion?
So we're a funding program. So we don't go out and talk to individuals. We're just the funding program. We oversee the design and construction of these projects. Really, that would be your local government officials. And if you're against the project, you should speak to those individuals, because we're not involved in the town politics of these projects. We keep very neutral on that.
And as you probably know, Mike, we have open meetings every month. We have a website with all information. We've had informational meetings. We've had roundtables. We've had 2 votes so far. We've done everything that we can. It's been in the News and Citizen. It's been in the Hardwick Gazette. If we're in some way missing context to people, short of knocking on people's door, everyone's door, then we've done everything that we could possibly do. Okay, how do folks feel about this slide? Peter, do you want to just talk to, just very briefly, how you're designing the new septic tanks for flood resilience? And also that would hold the solids at the individual parcels, and how that, and also the lines taking the liquid effluent up to the school. Can you just talk about just briefly about the flood resilience components that would be designed into that system?
Yep, sure. Kind of by definition, all of the tanks and risers need to be watertight. We don't want groundwater or stormwater or floodwaters to enter those tanks. The tanks will all be sort of ballast to prevent flotation in the event of a flood. And then all of the controls will be above the 500-year flood level. So we'll be mounting those above that. One of the benefits of a step system, the septic tank effluent pumping system, is that it's a closed system under low pressure force mains. And what that means is we don't really have to worry about infiltration into the system as you might with a manhole and traditional collection system. So really everything between the homes or businesses and the disposal field up at the school is watertight and ballast to prevent flotation. So that's not to say things can't happen and that the river's not going to do what it's going to do, but overall it's going to be a dramatic improvement over the current situation.
It's the,
I would add to what Peter said, that there are a number of backflow preventer valves built into the low pressure system, starting right at the tanks. So if something were to happen untoward, water wouldn't come back out of those pipes into people's homes.
Right.
The disposal field is 60 feet above the floodplain. And it's on a giant pile of sand. Thank you, glaciers, for leaving it for us when you left. So in terms of flood resilience for the wastewater system and the ultimate disposal, if the system is constructed, it will be much safer than the situation at present.
Is there a backup generator for the pumps?
There, for the main pumps going from tankage down low up to the disposal field, there would be.
Yes.
There would be emergency storage in each individual tank at individual properties.
Gotcha.
If property owners chose to have a backup generator, that would also power their very small, low power use effluent pump that sends out.
Get it up past the next backflow preventer.
Yep.
Mhm.
it's the equivalent of the other rules they have where when you have a propane tank in the floodway, you have to have two gigantic concrete anchors and you have to cable it directly to your propane tank so it don't float away on you.
Yep.
Seen that happen?
We had, Richmond had to do that with their, when they fixed it,
There were,
they made them go put that and anchor the propane tank because it was in the floodway.
I think Megan, the floodplain restoration project, the town facilitated down at Elmer Pond Road. I think there were several propane tanks after the storms. So they do flow.
Yeah.
They're not anchored.
I'll never forget watching them go down the Winooski outside my office. Summer.
One quick side note on the emergency generators at the properties is, most of the properties in the village are on-drilled wells that require electricity to run the pumps to get water. So that coupled with the fact that there's emergency storage in the tanks, people also won't be using the same amount of water if we have an extended spell of no power.
Okay, maybe we can just keep moving. This slide looks good to me. Okay, unless we have some thoughts, we can keep going, Tori. And
So you have on here that, the preliminary report has the construction schedule, but you have later on a different construction schedule.
Uh-huh.
Can you take that bullet point off?
Sure. I mean, we
Yeah, that's a
could,
good point. And then we
we-
might want to talk about the estimated costs being updated as well, if we're gonna put that there, or at least if I'm assuming I'm the one presenting this slide, I could elaborate on that a little bit.
is that in the next slide?
Well, it's in a
That's-
couple
that's
slides.
a timeline.
It's a timeline, and then the next one is the new cost. So I don't want people to think, as Lee pointed out.
we also could just take the bullet points off of this and keep, we can, because it probably will be Peter who talks about this one. Just say this is what the preliminary engineering report contained. And what we're gonna describe next is the details of the system that was the recommended alternative. And not have bullets that have since been superseded by new information.
And did you have that, Tori, the printout that you brought to the last meeting of this map?
Bring it again.
Yeah, that'd be great if you can do that. This is just really hard, it will be hard for people to see.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I don't know if we can blow it up anymore.
How many properties how many properties are served, or how many people tap in?
About 35, Peter, is that correct?
It seemed.
Yeah, that's
35 residential, 13 commercial.
Yes.
right. Yeah, right there on the slide.
Yeah.
Is that before the
At same
buyouts?
time, we have buyouts.
Right,
That's before the buyouts.
yeah. Could update the numbers on that if that would be helpful for folks.
Well, probably giving them the newest information is better.
Yeah.
But there's only 3 approved buyouts at this point. You know, even though we have more that have applied, it doesn't mean they've been accepted for funding. You know, we have 3 approved.
6 altogether in the village. Counting was it 2 over by Flatiron?
That's 3, 4, and 5.
5.
5,
So 5 total.
5.
5 in the village.
And there's another one, 6. They have 6 have applied, 3 have been approved.
In the village.
Yes,
Okay.
within this system.
There's one up in North Wolcott or something too. Right?
Oh, I have 3 more.
Nine.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah, if there's any way we can make this real clear so folks can look at the map and.
But I would only say 3 because of the approval. I mean, they're going through FEMA doing a cost ratio and FEMA might deny them, so we don't know.
But I'm not sure how much money they have, it's gonna affect it, and how many people are applying for it, it's gonna affect it too.
Mhm.
Okay, next, please. We say we want to kind of do like a scaled down version of this, Peter, just to, as far as not getting too much in the weeds, on how the system works, just as on a front
Scale
time.
down from last time, or, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. I mean, this might be good to have if you need to pull it up. I'm just concerned about the
I don't,
time.
I'm happy to, we could put this in the back. I guess at this point, I guess if the community understands what the system is, I don't need to get too much into this.
Maybe, Peter, we just talked about what you discussed as far as the flood proofing of the tanks and the backflows, and maybe that could even go on the flooding water quality page. Just maybe that might be better suited for that slide.
I think your information about the flood protection should go on the previous slide about flooding, and this maybe reiterates it. I think saying it twice is a good thing. Yeah. Would be my thought, to make sure that people understand, because it took me a second or more than a second to understand what you were meaning when you were saying ballasting septic tanks and backflow valves. Right. Saying it twice isn't a bad thing, because it's an important piece of it.
Emily, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to let you guys know I'm going to leave to go to the next meeting. You guys can always email me questions. And I would just really reiterate on this that the kind of funding your town is receiving is unheard of in the wastewater community for Vermont. So, you know, it's unheard of to have most of your project construction paid for. So I would make sure that that's reiterated at the meeting, that this is really a once in a lifetime for many of us in the wastewater world in terms of grant funding.
Emily, thank you for your efforts there, and Seth and Tori from the Regional Planning Commission. Emily, you're going to be, and I have to sign off. Are you going to be at the informational meeting?
Yes, I will be. As long as it's online, I will be there for you guys. So if anybody has questions, we can, from the state perspective, we can answer those for you.
That would be great. Thank you for coming in.
Oh, Emily, there will probably be more people 2 days later at the town barbecue. I don't know if there's a way to Zoom call in there from the parking lot where they're going to have their little informational booth, but that's probably where.
Wait a minute, Mike. This is a select board barbecue. This is not a political day. Yeah. For the barbecue.
Oh, because I thought you guys would have your committee meeting things there.
You better call me at home. We'll have a discussion. Please, please.
All right. Well, you guys all have a great night.
Thank
and
Emily,
we'll talk soon.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
So can I ask Lee a question? As being objective, looking at this for the first time, is this important? Is it important, do you think, for people coming to an informational meeting to understand how these tanks are?
How much in the weeds is enough versus too much, I guess, is a good question.
Because we've seen
on
it
the
over and
technology.
But for you, it might be new and it might be important, so that's.
Well, I've seen people on front platform talk about you know, a wastewater treatment plant and that sort of thing. But I think it seems to be pretty well understood that it's just basically a community septic system.
But they're flood proofed on each property. Do you think this is important or not?
I think the point is important to make.
I think, we say this sometimes at the meeting, but it essentially is a community septic system, and that's a very flood resilient system and out of floodplain, but it is a community septic system. And it's not a lagoon treatment system similar to Hardwick works. Okay, so Peter, maybe we could have this, but maybe not spend a whole lot of time on it. I don't want to go too much in the weeds on it, but.
It's up to you guys. We could put it at the back too, and if people start asking questions about what the system looks like and that's the direction things head, then we can just pull it up. That'd be one option.
Okay.
Well, that does show a gravity system still, right? That doesn't show pumps going up to an elevated.
It has both on there.
Yeah.
Shows the gravity of the pump station.
But that's got the scary red cross on it. Conventional gravity system.
Nope. And I think the next slide really is a good visual of what the community septic system looks like before it's covered up.
Yeah.
I think that's a good. It's almost. I would almost. This one almost looks like it would be better before the other one, but. It might be good to have a picture. Do we have a picture of the Warren School or Colchester School? I mean, after it's grassed over, it just looks like an athletic field, but it's not. This folks know it's not going to be left like that, you know.
And the one that hopefully we get to build for Wolcott probably won't ever look like the one in the photo, because the soils and the situation there is such that we should need pretty minimal grading. So you can actually just kind of trench ditch witch in the drip lines.
Right.
And only the manifolds on the ends are excavation.
Oh, so you don't have to dissolve.
So in my opinion, you
It's
shouldn't
even
show
less-
it.
Well, I mean, this lets you see what the drip lines look like. Since I didn't get my 1 foot extent little drip line example back after the June meeting.
This is my athletic field I'm looking at, and it looks like you're just gonna tear it up. And we're not.
We can, there are other images easily available that show both options. Maybe we, like, this one is helpful because it kind of shows how dispersed the flow is of those emitters.
Yeah.
But we could also, Rob from Oakson has given us pictures of the other option where you just trench it in and you see grass, basically.
I think that would be I think showing the installation with the ditch witch would be a good idea. I think.
And then, Tori, do we have is the
That's
next slide the one with the different cells? Nope. Did you have that one, Peter, with the different
We can put that.
cells? Only because I like,
we can
to
put
me,
that
it's
in red.
reassuring that if something goes wrong with one cell, you have all these other different cells. I think.
Was that, I thought that flashed up at some point tonight, but that isn't one you cut out, was it, Amy?
Yeah, it was one that I thought maybe we didn't need, but we can pop it back in.
You know, I do think that.
I mean, maybe I think we could modify those two, because the original presentation had how does drip dispersal work, and then why the split field. So
Yeah.
we can pop that one back in, and that shows the multiple zones.
I know we asked you to consolidate, but those two be separate for this discussion, I think are important.
Yeah, if we can continue just looking at the clock, it's getting towards the end here. So this one doesn't need to be updated, Peter, based on what we were just discussing.
This one is updated from the earlier one.
Contractor selection, okay.
the likely reality.
Okay, yeah, so late construction. Okay. That's pretty self-explanatory. All right, yeah, Lee, you were asking about these numbers. So the 4718, 4.718 number, that is with the 30% contingency. And you can see that we actually have a little bit more than that in the awards at 4.765.
Do we want to, like, all I did to this slide was put a strike through the
Yeah.
catalyst grant.
And
Do
you
we
have to
want to
change,
make this current?
yes,
So just get rid of this estimated project cost was this number, now it's this number. ARPA state village wastewater grant was this number, now it's
No,
this number. Do we want?
I think that the top,
Keep those?
I think the top numbers, I think it's important, in this, especially this discussion we just had earlier, that we revised the number based on most up-to-date numbers. And could we put the contingent, that 30% contingency? Put 30% up there?
Say includes 30%.
Yes, includes 30% contingency, and then the bottom one is, it's 1 million now, Linda, not 1.4. So
Well, we
maybe-
asked for 1.4, but Senator Rose office and Senator Sanders' office have put in for 1 million. So we've gone through 2 steps in the process, actually.
So, yeah, I think that's important. Maybe we have to change that number from 1.4 to 1.
Well, you
Yeah.
requested 1.4.
Okay.
But what's an elegant way of saying?
It's pending.
We achieved initial approval for 1.0 million?
I think it's to me, the most important part is there's another potentially $1 million out there. And just for,
Well, I'll see what they say while I'm doing that. So. I have a question and then I'll find it for you.
okay, I'm not sure, not sure what your first name is, but you have your hand up?
Yeah, this is Keith Cochran. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I've just basically come up on this in the last couple of weeks and didn't realize all of this was going on. And I'm wondering why that all of the townspeople are expected to fund a system for a few. I'm having to deal with my septic system and I'm having to pay for it.
That's, Keith, that's, we're talking about the slide that you see, I think you can see it on your computer.
Yep.
We have secured $4.765 million in grants to.
And grant, where do they come from? They come out of my left pocket instead of my right pocket.
It comes from you came in late, but we just had the state person that's in charge of the grant just had to leave the Zoom to go on to another meeting. She provided, her department provided a substantial chunk of this project, as well as several other, you can see on the Zoom there where some other grants came from, and these are state, for the most part, state and federal grant funds.
Right, but they still come out of tax dollars.
But you were asking about.
Just chime in what Emily would say, which is this money, if Wolcott decides not to use it, will just get allocated to another community in Vermont. There's more need in Vermont than there are dollars. So I hear your argument, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, but
I mean, I back up a little bit. Several years ago, I had to replace my septic a number of years ago. And at the time, my feeling and my observation was that it was caused by call it a screw up of the town highway. They installed culverts, they ditched it, and they dumped all the water on my property. It ran down, it flooded my leach field. I ended up putting a new leach field in. I went to the select board and was basically told, well, tough, it's your problem. Okay. I am now paying an engineer $4,000, between $3,500 and $4,000 to secure a permit for me personally to deal with my septic system if it does fail again. Because again, this year, with the amount of water that comes across that road, it's flooded. I've had issues, and I'm sick of funding everybody else's stuff plus mine.
But still, that's it.
Okay.
Let's move on. Okay, thank you. He doesn't really say, just that, the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Interior Environment and related agency has approved $1 million in fiscal year congressional direct spending. So the committee's approved it, but then it needs to go on to Congress.
Yeah, I think having just saying 1 million pending congressionally directed funds suffice.
Is the catalyst grant, there was the possibility of that shifting to the EDA source to that? We don't know that, so we should scratch that because we don't know what's happening with that. Okay.
Okay.
So there might be another 700,000 out there depending on
Depending.
that.
I don't know how you guys are finding all this money, but yeah, it's great.
The word unprecedented that Emily said
Is
is a thing. And don't expect a second try because it's very much built on a current environment.
And you have to take out the 125 of local ARPA funds.
Oh, because that was match for the catalyst. Is that correct?
As I recall, most towns, when they go apply for funding, they barely get 25% from the state. And then they don't have to pay 75% on the users.
Okay, I just wanted, we're over on meeting time. Can we just continue on the slide? Is that's $6 to $8 per 100? That's
Okay,
that's still accurate, right? As far as the only thing that in my mind, just having this conversation about the 3 approved buyouts that might adjust that number a little bit. I've been using the higher number, the $8 per 100,000. Just trying to take into account potential buyouts, and now the 3 are securing. We should revisit that concerning buyouts.
But that was 6 to 8 for the cost
That's
of
what-
the municipal property hooks on, but not if we had any debt service.
Right, that's for the municipal property, but
That's right, that's not the bond cost.
no, this is.
So why would it say tech would pay? Oh, yeah.
I don't think it should adjust things, but let's check that. We can check that and make sure.
How many people are signed up?
Signed up.
Well, we haven't asked them to sign up. yet.
First, we're doing the votes.
I see.
We have been, earlier this summer, we sent out permission requests to folks to be able to come on properties and start doing the interior inspections and topo surveys. We can provide a report out. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but we can report out on how many folks have sent those back and said yes, and kind of where we're at with that.
Yes, that'd be good.
Just the concern, and again, it's, you see it now with these posters along here, the signs, and the fewer people that want to hook up to, because presumably it's still it's still a choice for everybody.
It depends on how the ordinance is worded, but
If you have a failed system, it's not a choice, right?
you're gonna have to spend the money one way or the other.
This committee is working on a septic ordinance, which that would have all the kind of rules about the septic system and would also have the service rate and what those rates are. And we've been putting those numbers that we have thus far on those rates based on everybody hooking up and what the municipal, so that number is just for the municipal buildings that are being hooked up. And there's a half dozen municipal ready to be hooked up.
That would be, that's.
Well, the $25 to $40 per residential unit would be this per month. For the private residents, monthly fee for pumping out the systems and inspecting the systems, and the maintenance of the system.
And their solids removal is on them.
The solids removal is part of that.
Oh, it's part of that.
That would be included.
That just because it does get pumped, it gets sucked.
It's in the, it'll be a brand new septic tank in each parcel.
Yes, okay.
But the town would take over the management as far as when it gets pumped out, so everybody gets pumped out on a regular basis.
Okay, they don't have one cost for the gray water and one cost for the solids. It's.
And then the liquids get pumped up at school, but that would all be included in the service, the monthly service charges. Okay. And I think this slide, it's really important to point out that this is not the question that's being asked on the article.
Right.
So we have to be very clear about that.
But that's right, because it says both things there. It says debt service and O&M would be an annual impact.
Mm-hmm. This slide they mentioned, Amy mentioned that hasn't been updated since the last informational meeting. When we found out we got the extra grant money and will not likely need to borrow any money for the project. So we should probably clarify that bullet. And that this is not part of the article. As far as 6 to 8 per 100,000.
Might be separate bullet points or check marks.
Yeah, I might have to parse that out.
Jim, can you refresh my memory though? Was the 6 to 8, did that correspond with if we needed to borrow the 1.4?
No, that's for the service month, the annual service cost for the municipal buildings hooked up to the system.
Thank you, right.
Okay, we are very over our time here and we might have to continue the presentation. And we're gonna have to decide who's gonna do what, but yeah, I think this is.
We have one more. Okay, so the good news is that there's just the one slide left.
One more slide.
No, this is it.
Oh, this is okay. Okay. Yeah, so folks, it's 6:45. We're over here on our time. I'm just being conscious of everybody else's time. And just wanted to point, so Seth, we mentioned earlier, we don't really have a whole lot of time to discuss it, but we can have a brief presentation of the flood resilience model as part of this.
Okay, we'll coordinate that.
And so we're thinking just a few minutes or, I don't know, we can figure that out, but that'll be added into the slideshow.
Would we put those, I'm so sorry. Would the best place for that be when we're talking about the flood resilience benefits of the project?
Right.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Transition to the SLR for a little bit of information about those impacts and benefits.
Yeah. I will send that email to Jessica this evening, so I don't forget.
Okay, I think we should wrap up the questions we have. And so, do we have a hand up? Keith, do you have another question, Keith?
Do we have just?
Or was that from before?
We have a couple of minutes that maybe Seth could address. What some people are saying around town is they're really worried that the town's just going to completely flood out And there's no technical basis behind this. It's just that maybe exaggerated, maybe not, but it's just some notion that it's just gonna flood the whole damn town out. But what we have is a model of the river, of the flood conditions, of the geography. Is that correct?
If you want me to quickly talk about it, so yes, we have a model of the oil main stem of the flood conditions, can be calibrated for different, size storms, including the 500-year. It can be used to, evaluate, protective measures. It can be used to, for a structure, evaluate like a building, say like a home, a business, at what level of protection should be, brings it to each of those different elevations. How we have used it mostly is for infrastructure planning projects. So, evaluating widening bridge spans, identifying natural resource restoration options like floodplain restoration. The town has been using it for companion projects, Flatiron Road. It was used to kind of reinforce the need for relocating Flatiron Road outside of the floodplain. I think what I would come back to actually, related to the comment earlier about, runoff damaging septic systems and leach fields is that there are tools for protecting infrastructure like roads and bridges. There are tools for making buildings, more resilient by ballasting the buildings, by using flood resistant materials, by elevating them. In some cases, buying out is the better option because of the elevation or velocity. There are not good tools for floodproofing something that is designed for water to pass through, like an on-site leach field. The tool to do that is to get it out of the floodplain. And you have an opportunity to get the leach field serving those 40+ properties out of the floodplain. And there's not another tool to do that. We've got communities upstream and downstream from you that are talking about $30 million projects to get wastewater treatment plants out of the floodplain. So you have a $4 million opportunity to never have to worry about that.
Yeah, look at what Johnson and Herbert are going through right now.
Yeah.
Bruce, was your point that you would address the question, well, why do you put all this money into a wastewater system when the buildings get washed away, might just get washed away?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I just.
But what does the model show for effect on the buildings in this area?
So I think the model shows, that there are varying levels of risk depending on where you are in the village. There's areas like the north side of Route 15 that have, where the bus buildings are, that have, I would say risk similar to pretty much everywhere along the Route 15 corridor. And then you have areas that are like the lower end of School Street, especially south of the LVRT bridge, where there's pretty high risk. Which you all know that's where the epicenter of that flash flood was. I think in last year, and that's where a lot of the buyouts are happening. It also shows that there are ways with infrastructure retrofitting, like widening bridges, especially the LVRT bridge down there and School Street Bridge and Flatiron Road, which the town is working on in various ways, all three of them, to reduce the current risk. And there are also tools for the buildings that are in those kind of middle zone risk areas for protecting with floodproofing elevation. I will say that one of the things that we're struggling with, I think, everywhere is that Stowe Hollow was not in any flood map. These microburst storms have the potential to create risk anywhere. And the way to mitigate that risk is by having their infrastructures as resilient as possible. Whether it's a culvert on the side of a mountain, or, you know, down in the valley, there's needs to do things to our infrastructure no matter what. Wolcott is, I think, considering how small town Wolcott is ahead of the game based on the work the select board has done since the model was created on those mitigation projects. Here, the town has also been working on projects on Elmore Pond Road and up on North Wolcott Road. There's different layers of risk, and the town's regulations really recognize that, where development is concentrated based on the town's regulations is in those areas that are along 15 and on the portions of 15 that are not in the floodplain, where the town's regulations does not allow new development or areas, especially in the floodway. And especially, you know, the areas that are most vulnerable, where it has been a lot of these flooding impacts and buyouts after the July storm.
My point was that it's not completely unknown, and it's been exaggerated in the community, I believe, with people scaring other, not scaring, but they really just don't know. So, you know, the river model will accurately, within its parameters, tell you what's going on.
And I'd say that we used that in Jeffersonville, and for the Halloween storm, based on a similar sized flood in the model, matched the Halloween storm's level. The Halloween 2019 storm, if that's becoming an outdated phrase at this point, you know, and that the flood resiliency investments that were made in Jeffersonville led to not needing to evacuate the Jeffersonville senior housing in the Halloween 2019 storm, the December 2023 storm, and the July 2024 storm, and added 45 minutes to the response and evacuation window in the July 2023 storm. And I just use that example because not investing in making infrastructure more resilient doesn't make the flood problem go away.
Okay, we gotta wrap up, guys. Appreciate that, Seth, and I want to hear more about that, but
yeah,
at our next meeting. Okay, folks on Zoom, we gotta wrap up. We're way over, we're half hour over. I appreciate everybody coming in person and on Zoom, and have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the time. You, California.